Welcome back to Looking for Work. I'm super excited to be here and be answering questions. I'll throw up the little banner at the bottom. So we do this every week, 12 o'clock noon Pacific. Jump on and talk about what it takes to get your first gig, to get first job in IT, data engineering, DevOps, software engineering. It's all kind of the same in terms of the gauntlet you have to run the first time. Good news is after the first time, it gets much easier. So the way this works, I will keep my comment box open and I invite you to ask questions, share your thoughts. If you're struggling with any part of the job search or you're struggling with just the process in terms of maybe interviewing or working on passion projects, what you should be doing to get better, then shoot me a question via your comment box. We should be live on Facebook, LinkedIn, the YouTubes of the world, Periscope, and Twitch. Once again, we do this every week, so I'm happy and excited to see the audience sort of growing over time, and just super grateful that I can use some of the lessons that we've learned over the last, 5-6 years or so in the bootcamp space, as well as my industry experience from before. So I've been writing software for about 32 years. I'm aging myself a bit with that, but that said, the process it's different. It's not intuitive. It's not how most people, when they go through like either coding bootcamp or self-taught or even a CS program, might imagine the job search and interview process. So I'm more than happy to opine, but I'm more interested in just answering people's questions. So if you have a question, please drop it in the chat box. That will immediately send the question to me, and then I should be able to give you some feedback. Or you can just drop in and say hello and hi and all that fun stuff. So give me a thumbs up, give me a like. That'll help spread it. And yeah, I mean, we'll hang on here for as long as the hour. So hopefully the audience will have some questions for us. In the meantime, super excited to share a little bit of news. So the organization that I founded in San Diego Code School also started a nonprofit organization, and I'm super excited to announce to the world, you'll hear it here first, that we are now a Department of Labor approved apprenticeship program. So we have a DOL approval for our apprenticeship. It means we'll be able to offer all sorts of amazing opportunities for folks from like veterans to folks that are in all these different like demographic groups that we can now sort of extend into. And I see Laurel Kelly is on. I can now see you. And so I think you fixed whatever that permission issue is. It's good to see you as a person and not just a LinkedIn user. So awesome to see we work that out. And yeah, so happy to hang out here. Like I said, answer people's questions. I'll drop them in the chat box. You can also send me an email. I'll keep my email open. And hopefully it won't be too much of a distraction because I get a lot of messages. But you can email Mike, M-I-K-E, at sdcs.io. I have a much longer email now. I have Mike at creatingcodingcareers.org. And that's the other piece. That's the second piece of our announcement. So we are now fully operating our apprenticeship program as a nonprofit. So 100% of the operation is now shifting over to the nonprofit side. San Diego Code School will live on. We'll do some other sort of creative things in the space to help educate and train people. But the apprenticeship operation is now going to be 100% nonprofit. So we're just super excited and fortunate to be in the situation where the federal government believes we can help train people. That's good. We've been able to demonstrate it. We have lots of companies that we've gotten people like Antonio Silva, I like that. Antonio with the little pop and bottle champagne. So Antonio is a former student. He's been working in the industry now for a while, for a little over a year. So I'm glad that we can really help people on their journey. That's what it's about. It's just how do we help as many people as possible realize their capacity to become software engineers and get them into a position where they can learn and grow every day. So that's what I'm pumped about every day, helping as many folks as we can. So good to see you, Billy. Great folks over there at you're at UCS. No, you're at You're at Miramar Rec, right? So entrepreneur. So good seeing folks jumping on, saying hello. I like it. That'll help us spread the reach. If you just jump on and you say hello, goes out to a wider network. Hopefully, we'll find somebody that will find some value in this, and it'll help some people along the way. So, yeah, what questions you have? If you have a question about the job search, you have a question about interviewing, what you should be spending your time on throughout the week, how you go about optimizing your day. Some of the things I hear from folks are, should I be studying algorithms, and what should I be focused on? So any of those things are of interest, and drop a question in the box, and I'll be more than happy to answer. It does vary depending on the specific type of either role or size company that you're looking at. So if you can give me some context too, that's generally super valuable too, because then I can really hone in on, okay, this is how your process is going to maybe be slightly different than somebody else. Questions. I love seeing all these people popping in. This is amazing. Good to see you, Billy. Hopefully you're cruising along with your startup. So for those folks that are thinking about breaking into tech, like, again, drop me a message if you're early on and you're not even sure. Last week we had a question from somebody about what's the best boot camp, or how do you know if the boot camp is the right fit for you? So we dove a little deep. So in the previous weeks, if you missed these, they're all on YouTube. So I usually will post them up on YouTube. As soon as this finishes, they'll go live as soon as YouTube does its little processing thing. But they're all there. They're all archived. So you can go through. At this point, we've got lots of hours of content on there. So I may even be writing a little book. I got someone transcribing episodes now. So I might have there might be a hardcover version of this at some point. But best answers are real time. So if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat box. And let me check my email and see if anything's come through. That's the other spot where people miss it, and then they send me questions like right after it was. This is less than ideal from an optimization standpoint. All right, where's my window with email? Here we go. In the meantime, don't be shy. Drop a question in there. I know sometimes it takes a little while to get people online and get people warmed up, but if we don't get any questions, you know what happens? We end this early and I go to lunch. So we're lunching it up. I don't see any recent questions, and I'm pretty sure we didn't have any left over from last week. So this is gonna be a short one. I'm gonna start threatening people with lunch. All right, Billy's got a question. Good. It'll give us some time to get some more questions in. So if you have a question while I'm answering this one, feel free to drop it in, and we'll just we'll keep them rolling. So Billy's question is, I'd like to hire someone to upload our MVP web-based app to Google Firebase. Do you know anybody that has those skills? Wow, Firebase. Okay, so Firebase, that technology is largely JavaScript. So the cool part about that is that even if someone doesn't specifically have experience working with Firebase, if they're at least moderately experienced web developer, they should be able to figure it out and get you the support that you need to get your app on Firebase. The cool part about Firebase is that they make the developer community that supports Firebase and the folks at Google that maintain that whole product line are super aware of the fact that there are some folks that are maybe not super skilled, or they just don't have a lot of experience in the back end. And so they try and make the Firebase product really kind of like a backend as a service. And I know that might not make a lot of sense to people that are maybe not as familiar with front end and back end. But you can think of the back end as all your data and all the business logic around what happens with the data. The front end is more of like what you interact with and like what you get to click on and type and fill out. So Firebase is designed for as a product to help make it easier for developers to very quickly build out the back end, build out storing the data, retrieving the data so that you can make your application like, interesting and unique for individual users. So I personally know lots of people that have that skill. So I would say here in San Diego, the best resource for you to just tap into and see if anybody's interested in your project would be the San Diego JavaScript community. There is a Slack channel, so you could just go into the Slack channel and say, hey, I'm looking for someone with some Firebase experience or someone that might be interested in learning and helping us get this application up onto Google. So I would check out san diegojs.org, and then you can find the link to get to the Slack channel, and you could literally ask someone for help in real time, and they'd potentially be able to jump in and say, oh yeah, either I'm familiar with it or I know somebody that would be interested in helping out. So Firebase, again, is largely, since it's made as a backend as a service, the way you interact with it largely is by using JavaScript, by using a language that a lot of front-end developers are familiar with. Now, if they're a full stack developer, that means they have experience on the front end and the back end, then it's like a cake. Like this will be even easier for them. And they may even say, hey, I might be able to get you a solution that doesn't need to leverage Firebase. And instead, you could leverage something that doesn't require you to be kind of like locked into Firebase. I don't want that to sound terrible. Firebase is a good place to start, and they have a very generous tier that you can use where your costs will be really low and it won't cost you very much to scale your application up. And so you can migrate it later if you're using it just to get your application launched. Firebase is a good place to start because you can quickly get your application out there. So great question. Hopefully that helps. You should be able to find tons of people that can work in that environment because Firebase is made to be really easy to use for developers. It's a great question. Let's keep them coming. Anybody else have any questions? I feel like I've been useful to one person. Anyone else? Feel free to drop them in there. If not, it's going to be short. It's going to be like a 15-minute, which is okay. It's fair. I know people are heads down. You got the job search, and so you're good to go. I love that. People are no questions. I hope means that people are just ready to go. They know exactly what they're doing. I'll pitch one other thing that I am tonight going to be on a webinar, which I'm super excited about. So the webinar is about technical apprenticeships, including like cybersecurity, IT operations, and cloud computing. Companies like Microsoft and Google are investing heavily in apprenticeships. So it's put on by Blackson Tech. So I'm the chapter lead or chapter director for Blackson Tech here in San Diego. And so it is happening tonight. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern, so 4 p.m. Pacific. I'll throw a little link in somewhere. I guess I can post a link. That's a good question. Can I post a link back to you guys? I think I can. So let me see if I can do that. Let me see if I can post a link to the webinar because that would be amazing to get a little cross-pollination going on here. Let's see. I keep coming up with the panelist link. I don't want to give you that one because that would everybody be in the back room and the code moderators would be like, "What are you doing?" Oh man. I think a specific thing in my email seems to get harder and harder every day. I don't know if you face that problem, but I just have like a lot of emails. It's kind of embarrassing, but I have 30,000 emails in my inbox. I don't do a very good job of like sorting through them. They get read. Most of them get read. But right now I have 30,000 in my box, and it's kind of embarrassing. Oh, man. I think I don't want to give you a bad one. Hello from America, UK. I am safe and well. I hope you guys are safe and well out there. I hear that you got some variants of the COVID. So that's not good. I'm one step closer to getting a vaccination, so feeling good about that. They opened it up in California. Everybody that's not yeah, if you just got like really anything, like I got hypertension, diabetes, I got all the comorbidities. So I am at this point safe at home and well. So okay, I think I have found the link. Now I just have to figure out how to share it. Well, no, that's not it either. Dang. All right, I'll find it afterwards. I'll make a big post and get everybody all excited and fired up. I saw it on the interwebs too. Maybe I can find it there. DJ Yannick, did you have a question? I love seeing my Twitch is like every time I do this, I get like one more follower on Twitch. It's like, yes, one day we'll have a ton of people on Twitch that just want to learn how to code. Ryan, blast from the past. Ryan Dalton. All right, I'm going to put your question up here. So Ryan asks, hey, Mike, what would be your number one piece of advice for a new or semi-new programmers to get noticed in the job market? I see a lot of programmers in my LinkedIn network talk about getting no response to job applications. Yeah, so that is super frustrating. I know for a lot of people that are on the job search, they have a sense that because they're not hearing from folks that like nothing's happening and whatnot. But I would actually counter that narrative and say that for a lot of employers, when they put out listings, they don't actually get that many responses in many cases. It just may be that they're so busy and that they might not see a match initially when they get an inquiry that they don't take the time to reach out, right? And so if they don't feel like it's a match, then a lot of times they will just not be responsive to applications. That's not condoning it. I don't think that's a good policy or practice. I think if someone applies, you should take the time to respond to them and do so in such an easy, it's so super easy these days because we have all these tracking systems where you can literally just say, hey, you don't have a skill set that we're looking for at this moment, but we'll keep your information on file and something new might open up. So it'd be great if more companies would do that. So that's sort of the symptom. And I want to make sure people kind of really understand that like it's not necessarily the case that they've ignored you. They just, well, they kind of have because they haven't responded to you, but they may have reviewed it and they just didn't see a connection. So that basically means that it might not go anywhere within that organization. The way you stand out, and this is, again, I talk about this all the time, so hopefully it doesn't hurt your ears if you've heard this before, is that you demonstrate your passion. So work on some projects, have something that you can show that definitely shows that you're not just interested in, I want a job, I want to make money. Instead, it's more about, well, I really enjoy doing this and I add a lot of value, I think, because my background is well suited to solve your customers' problems or your internal needs as a business. And let me demonstrate, a little bit of like why I enjoy, coding. Here's the projects that I work on. And then you give them your GitHub, your portfolio, and you have meaningful work on there. I think if you do that, that's the one piece of advice I'd share is like, don't just say, hey, I'd really love to be a software engineer. Demonstrate it. Write some stuff, build some things, share it with the world, get some feedback. That's going to be the easiest way for you to convince the hiring manager that you have the skills necessary for you to be a good fit in their organizations. So I know it's counterintuitive because for a lot of people, they're just like, oh, I thought it's like getting a certificate or it's passing this exam or it's being able to pass the code test. And it's like, no, it starts even before that. It starts with just, if I was a hiring manager, to your first part of your question, when I apply for the job, the first thing I'm going to usually ask for is like, what's a link to your GitHub repository? Can you send me a link to your portfolio or some of your work? And then I'm going to look at that. And if I'm interested, it's almost like you have to beat me off with a stick at that point. Because once I'm interested and I like the work that you've done and I'm interested in the things that you work on and your technology choices and things like that, it's much, much more like interesting to then want to have the conversation and want to give you some real feedback, and you will stand out. It is the ultimate donut trick, right? I mentioned this before, but like you would think that after hearing about the donut trick, every CTO and hiring manager would have like piles of donuts. They'd come into their office every morning and there'd be donuts there. And here's the donut trick: that you find out who the hiring manager is and you send them a box of donuts, right? Maybe with a card or something. It's like, hey, here's some treats for your breakfast. I'd love to talk to you about the opening, something like that, right? Whatever. I'm not giving you copy. I'm not giving you actual copy for the letter. I'm just saying, you send them a box of donuts, right? And who's not going to respond to that? Who's not going to love a box of donuts? Now, after saying that, you would think all across the world, all these hiring managers just get all these boxes of donuts. Doesn't happen. I do know someone that did that, and he bought someone some, I think it was either donuts or bagels. And guess who got the job? That guy, right? And so as many times as I've said this, there's only a few people who have ever done it. And so it's like 100% success rate. So it's the same thing with like, you would think the easiest advice is like build something that's interesting and that you're passionate about. And the majority of people will not build things that they're passionate about. They just don't do it. They believe that the path is elsewhere. And so they work on other things. And it's like, nope, that is really the secret. Talk to any hiring manager, ask a hiring manager, what do you think about passion projects? And be like, yeah, that's the secret. There it is. That's the secret. I gave it away. Everything else is downhill. I don't know why you need me anymore. Okay. AstraZeneca, we're going to get sidetracked a little bit here. So Brazilian strain, that doesn't sound good, but Brazil's nowhere close to UK, so I don't know how that happened. AstraZeneca, I think that's better than nothing. I think AstraZeneca is not approved here in the US yet. There's a bunch of dust up about it, but I think any shot's better than no shot. So that's my take on it. I'm not an epidemiologist though, so don't take my advice from that. Do you have a question? What are your thoughts on the recent findings on Hawking radiation, and how do you think going forward potential employees were said to findings and consideration when recruiting potential employees? I have no idea what Hawking radiation is, so you'll have to help me understand. This is something I've completely missed out on. It's like TikTok. I'm just like way too old and not paying attention to it. So if you could clarify further what you mean by the Hawking radiation. Not sure. Sounds interesting though. Sounds interesting about identifying candidates. I'm always about trying to identify candidates in ways that are more sane. And I think what I generally find is that the processes that are used by a lot of folks to screen candidates are not, they just don't work. They're not effective. So strategies, super ineffective. So I would say, yeah, if you could shoot me an email with it, I'd love to hear it. I read an interesting research paper yesterday. One of my colleagues sent a paper, and it was fascinating. It was about a study that they did helping to identify, I'm going to completely mess this up. I just know it. But it was a research study where they basically had experienced, middle, and novice developers try and identify pieces of Java code and try and separate and distinguish what types of algorithms were being used in the code. And so it was really like a recognizing the coding pattern and then being able to categorize it. So it's kind of like categorizing a task. And they did MRIs on people's brains to try and figure out what parts of the brain were being utilized for this task. It was very interesting. It was looked like it was much more focused on the parts of your brain that are aligned with language than with mathematics. And so I just found the information super fascinating. So love to read the paper or what you posted there. So across the channels, I just placed the link for the webinar tonight, The Emergence of Technical Apprenticeship Programs. Super excited about speaking on that panel and talking a lot more about what we are working on, what we're all about with creating coding careers and trying to generate more interest in this apprenticeship pattern where people get paid to learn how to code. So you earn and learn. Best way to describe it. So yeah, so if you get some time, check that out tonight. I'd love to have more people come out and ask questions and learn a little bit more about the apprenticeship pattern, especially employers. If you know any employers that are thinking about ways that they can help get some more diverse candidates, get more women, more folks that they are generally not being able to successfully recruit from the traditional 4-year degree pipelines. We get a ton of people that are skilled through alternative routes, or STARS, skilled through alternative routes. Ton of them choose that path, going through either an apprenticeship program or coding boot camp, self-taught, lots of different avenues. So, all right, we're running short on questions today. I feel like I'm doing a lot of filler, and I feel like I have more in the tank. I got more to give. Put me in, coach. Shoot me some questions. I would love to help answer any queries that you might have about the job search. I know it might be hard to just because there's just so much out there. But yeah, if you're having problems with either the rejection portion, if it's opening, like how do you network? I'll go in whatever direction you want to go in. Yeah, drop me some questions. The networking one comes up all the time, and people are always asking me for like, how do you reach out to people, etc. Like a human is but the tangible way is like you just genuinely try and connect with people. So, reach out to them, tell them you're super excited to be learning more about coding, and you are interested in talking to people that work at that company because the company does this thing, and try and make it less focused on how do I get a job and more focused on just like, how do you connect on a real level with people? Yeah, donuts is 100% equal to success, Ryan. It is a very simple, and it's insert something in place of donuts. It's not always donuts, but it is, it's a passion project, or it's cookies, right? But that thing, as human beings, we're just adverse to working sometimes. We're the lazy creatures of the planet, and we want things to just kind of be easier. We gravitate towards the path of least resistance. But if you just do things that people have shared with you have a high chance of success, you got a better chance of optimizing your time. I'm just trying to save you some time. I'm just telling you the donut trick works. So, Jason Park, Mr. Park. I'm taking the Udacity data engineering course and looking for a data engineering job. Smart person. So smart. I'm just going to stop there and just say, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent. Data engineering is where it's at. No one's hiring junior data scientists. All right. That word is important. Most people that are hired as junior data scientists actually are doing data engineering. They're doing ETLs. They're doing just a whole bunch of other like data wrangling tasks. They're not doing real data science. And I know like that's going to sound bad on some people's ears, but I'm not hiring a junior person to like handle my most valuable models and algorithms. Nope, not trusting it. I want someone that's got more experience. But the way you get in is through data engineering. And on its own, it's a great discipline. So data engineering is really about moving data around, making sure it's secure, making sure it's sanitized, making sure that it's able to then be used and processed by data scientists. So love the lead in with taking the engineering course. I think that's one of the smartest moves you've ever made in your life, Mr. Park. So I think the fastest way to be good at something is to find a mentor or mingle with people pursuing the same goals. 100% agree. Man, you are a sharp dude. But it's really hard to meet them, especially because of COVID. Any recommendations? Absolutely. First is, just because there aren't physical events happening, there's still tons of organizations that are doing virtual networking events. So I know our organization, one of the many organizations I'm involved with is San Diego JavaScript. And so San Diego JavaScript used to do 8 in-person events every single month. 8. That was like 2 events per week. 2 nights out of the week, we would be meeting in person and chopping it up and just nerding out on JavaScript. These days we do like 4 a month, and they're all virtual. So, join a local organization. There's a data engineering meetup organization in San Diego. So shout out to the San Diego data engineering folks. I've actually spoke at their meetup. And so you can reach out to them. I know they're doing once a month networking events on the regular, but anywhere in your local community. And now, because we're all virtual, really anywhere in the country, you can find these pockets of organizations, great places for you to just like increase your network and start having an opportunity to one-on-one chat with folks. So don't let the fact that we're in COVID make it feel like you can't, be able to communicate and connect with one another. Great question. What makes a GitHub repo impressive? This is, again, very subjective. So from my standpoint, what I like seeing is I like seeing repos that are high quality README, right? If you don't have a README, you're missing a huge opportunity to make a nice first impression on someone. Look at READMEs for like pretty well-known packages. Like if you go to a package like Axios on NPM, go to NPM's registry, look at something like Axios. You'll probably see first off along the top, there's usually badges that show you like whether or not the build is actually working correctly or if the build is broken. So the continuous integration, the status on that. You might have some that show code coverage, like what percentage of the code is covered by unit tests. Then you'll kind of move into, usually there's sort of like a, what is this blob of code? What is this code about? So what does this repository have in it, and why should this be of interest to you? Super important. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone into a GitHub repository and it's like I'm trying to decipher what the code actually does. And the person that wrote it could have very quickly just said, oh, if you've landed here, this is what you're looking at, right? This is code that could be utilized to do this, and really make it super just easy for a 4-year-old to figure out this is what this code does. Don't assume any prior knowledge, and instead provide links to places where you think this person, if they need to go deeper, should go here. I don't need to explain it all. I don't want to have to curate the content here on my repository, but tons of links to places where it's like this repository requires these dependencies, and then you list the dependencies and maybe links to where those places where they can find out more information about it. So you list what it is, you list the dependencies, and then maybe some documentation for someone to just get started with it. Like, what's the quick, easy way to get started using whatever you've created, whether it's a full product or it's a service or it's a front-end UI or if it's, whatever the pieces are. And so I think if you give those pieces, I am impressed that like you got it together. Like you've now given me something that I can easily consume and know what to deal with. If you don't do all of those pieces, I would say I very quickly start to question, are you sane? Are you a sane person? Because we typically trip ourselves up by not providing enough breadcrumbs, where it's like, if I work on something on Friday, if I don't document it well by Monday, I cannot remember why I was working on it and why I wrote the code that way. So if you can't leave yourself good enough breadcrumbs, it's like a very bad sign that it's a big code smell that like, okay, well, we might be in really troubled waters if we start going through this code base and start looking at it because the repo is not even like well organized. The second thing I would suggest is that you follow idiomatic patterns. So what do I mean by idiomatic? For people that aren't familiar with that term, that means like the standard for that language or that framework. So not only does the repo have like a README, but use a file structure that like is typical for that specific type of code base. So as an example, I'm not a huge fan of Java, but Java has this practice of having like nested folders. And there might only be like one file, and it might be nested 4 different folders, and then there's one file in it. And they use that folder structure, and that has a sort of a meaning inside of Java. It helps with organizing that particular type of code. But you'd never do that with like other types of code. So use the right one that's appropriate for your language. You would never do that with like JavaScript. If it's JavaScript, people expect to find something that lets them know, is this going to be used for the front end, the back end, or for both? Because you can now use like Node on the server side. And then what folders might be for testing. You might have just a standard process that you use for how you like organize the code. So that makes the repository impressive, having a README, having the right file structure that's organized in the right way. And then the last is like, is it set up in such a way where you've got the issues turned on if you want people to be able to contribute? Like, suggestions and be able to provide you an opportunity to, give feedback. If you don't turn it on, if you don't enable it, there's no way for people to do that. Like, you have to actually, by default, it probably turns it on, but you got to make sure you've checked that box and allow people to actually leave comments and issues. There's a built-in like wiki mechanism, at least on GitHub. And so you can basically write more documentation and provide more feedback for folks. So I like to see that there's at least a good quality README. But if it's something that's like a library you want people to use, then keeping the documentation right there on GitHub can also be really helpful, keeping it in the wiki. So those are the things that I think, to me, when I see it like fully flushed out, I'm like, all right, cool. And then it could be like a really simple application, but you did all of the pieces to show like this is professional grade. This is like heavy duty. This is like good to go. If you don't, then I start to fear like, are you rushing? Like you're not paying attention to the details. And that leaves me with the impression that like, maybe this is not, you don't have the attention to detail that I'd like to see in the quality of work that you might be producing. So that's my 2 cents. That's what I look at. And I can very quickly check off that list in my brain and put it into 2 different buckets. One is like, oh, this is like super professional. This is well done. And right away, my brain is like, oh, this is a pro. This is a person that knows what they're doing. The other bucket is like, I'm a little skeptical. Either you're a pro and you're kind of like lazy and you don't follow through on stuff, or you're more amateur and you just need more experience to know like what you should actually be doing. So it's a bad sign either way. When I bucket it into my mind out of the professional one. Mr. Park, you are welcome. Anthony, how do I feel about Upwork and getting work from it? It is a perilous journey when you go into that ecosystem. And here's what I would say about it for people that are like, maybe you're new, maybe you're starting to kind of dabble and this is a side hustle. And so you're learning to code as a side hustle, but you're not quite ready to, to burn the bridge and just do it full time. You should just be aware that it can be very, very easy to work really hard and not make that much on Upwork. And what I mean by that is initially, usually you have to do fixed price bids because you're dealing with a lot of, on Upwork, I'd say the vast majority of the projects that are on Upwork are going to be for people that are looking for things to be built or fixed, and they don't have a lot of experience in hiring like really competent software engineers. So maybe their first project, so they've never hired anyone before, or they're used to hiring folks at just like very low, inexpensive rates and just dealing with like a lot of knuckleheads, right? So needless to say, there aren't a lot of great clients on Upwork. And so you just have to be prepared for that you're going to go through a lot of clients. And I'd say, the majority of the clients on Upwork are just not going to be good clients. They're just not used to being taken care of by professionals. And so because of that, the majority are going to be tough to work with and tough to deal with. That's not saying all of them. So there are some people that really know what they're doing and they know exactly how to like screen for someone. And so they can really leverage that marketplace because they know exactly which folks, and there's just a big marketplace of providers for them to work with. So go into it knowing that one of the challenges when you're doing freelance work is managing your clients' expectations. I'd say that's one of the biggest challenges. The second is actually delivering whatever it is that they want built, but oftentimes their expectations don't align with reality. And so as long as you go into it with that, with like, hey, some of these deals are going to be super painful and you'll build something and you'll deliver it and the person will just be not super happy. And you just have to know, like, you did your best. And there was no way that you could know in advance how to keep them happy and make sure that you're not going to like just burn yourself out. You will get a better sense of that only over time. So just be aware that it's tough. If you like, when people are like, I would rather freelance, I want to go to a coding boot camp and then I want to freelance for a while. I'm like, no, you don't. You want to get a regular full-time job because it's way easier to deal with like professionals around you than it is to deal with like a majority of your customers that are going to be really tough people to deal with because they just have unrealistic expectations because it's just really hard. It's like there are some things in software engineering that are really hard, but they seem like they're easy. And there's some things that are easy, but they seem like they're really hard. And it's hard to integrate that very quickly with customers and explain to them and build enough trust in the relationship that you're like, trust me, that's a no big deal. I can take care of that quickly. And they're just like freaking out that like the font size is the wrong size. And you're like, trust me, that's like super easy. That's like one I only have to change one digit in one file to fix that. Oh my goodness, I've asked you 3 times. I don't understand why you're not fixing this. And it's like, it's just a small oversight. I got you. It's a really fast fix. And so there's this huge disconnect because they kind of look at it like you painted their whole house, but you painted it the wrong color. And they don't realize like, oh, in CSS, that's really fast. I just change a number and the whole house is painted a different color. But it's hard for people to know that. So in any event, those are my thoughts. How do I feel about getting the work on there? You can just be prepared. It is way more challenging than I think a lot of people think it's going to be. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to go on. I'm going to bid on a few contracts. I'll get one. And then, I'll kind of figure it out. And it can be somewhat addicting because you can get really good at being able to figure out a niche. And that's where you can actually make really good money on Upwork. If you can figure out how to dominate one specific niche, then you can build a niche even on Upwork where you're competing against people that are like way below your price range. But like you could just be the best in that category and you can always charge whatever you want to charge and do really well. So, but just be prepared. It usually takes about a year or so to build up a good client base and get into a niche and then crush it. Did it for a while. That's how I actually transitioned from coding as a hobby to coding as a profession. I was doing it as a side hustle. At the time, there was no Upwork. There was Elance and VWorker, and there was one other one, Guru. The best of all of them at the time was Elance. It was just better here in North America. And I figured out a niche, and I got into that niche, and we did really well. It was in learning management systems, which is something that was like close to my heart. So it can definitely be done, but it's painful. So that's why a lot of people will not realize that once you get a job as a dev and you're like, a mid-level engineer or a senior engineer, they do not want to do side projects. They do not want to do like in the evening, do some freelance work. You very quickly figure that out within your first year or so as a software engineer on the job. It's like, I'm not burning myself out every weekend and every evening to deal with the customers that don't know what they're talking about. It's like, that's not worth my frustration to make an extra $10 an hour. Because you got to do that for a while before you can get to the point where you can make like $150, $200 an hour. Yeah, it takes a while to get there. So it's a little different for like designers. Designers can do really well. But that's a little bit different. Than software engineering. Software engineering, it's a slog. It's going to take you a rough first year before you build out a business. So, is it Clerka? Tyler, transitioning service member. Thank you for your service. Appreciate that. Are coding bootcamps part of SkillBridge and/or efficient ways to go from zero to hero? I like that. Well, you're already a hero because you already served the country as a service member. So you're a hero in my book. From a options for bootcamps standpoint, I don't know of many. I'm getting more familiar with SkillBridge now that we're DOL approved apprenticeship program. We will certainly be eligible for training some folks on SkillBridge. For those of you that are not familiar with SkillBridge, SkillBridge is a program that you can leverage if you're an active duty service member and you're transitioning from active duty to leaving the service. And so in your last, it's like 6 months or so, maybe up to a year, somewhere in while you're active duty, if your commanding officer says that it's okay for you to do so, you can basically start training and getting paid to work and train in some new career that you're going to do when you transition out of the military. So SkillBridge, amazing program. I don't know of any of the big programs that are participating with SkillBridge. So I would say you're going to have to research, you're going to have to dig in there specifically and find out if any of them are participating or part of it. I know we will be soon. It'll be about a month or so. And then I think it'll be part of the offerings that we can provide as a registered apprenticeship program. We'll have a pre-apprenticeship program. There are other programs though that I think are going to be even more interesting. So I guess, and you can throw a comment in here if you want to, that you're still active duty and you haven't transitioned yet. So I would try and identify a SkillBridge program first, because that'll let you get started. And any kind of pre-apprenticeship training will let you get started. Then once you're done and once you fully transition, so now you're not employed full time anymore, you're just out there looking for something, the best program I would suggest would be a tech hire boot camp. So if you can find a boot camp that offers the tech hire program, it's not all of them. So it's very difficult. It's very, well, I won't say difficult. It's challenging in that it takes a long time to qualify for GI Bill and vet tech programs as an operator of a boot camp. So it's not something that a lot of boot camps are able to do and turn on really quickly. So once a boot camp has been around for a while, then they can usually start applying for programs like Tech Hire. The reason why I keep mentioning that is because Tech Hire doesn't consume any of your GI Bill benefits. Tech Hire allows you, even if you have, like, again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just giving you this off the top of my head. But I believe if you just have like $1 left on your GI Bill and you've got $1 in a day left on your GI Bill, it comes from a separate fund. So it doesn't consume your GI Bill funds. And instead, they have this separate pool of money that they drain every year called the Tech Hire program. The school basically gets a certain amount when you first sign up, then they get a certain amount when you're done, and then a certain amount when you get a job. So a lot of the coding boot camps are willing to accept this program because it doesn't use your GI Bill. The next option is using your GI Bill. So you can use your GI Bill to cover tuition. And then for apprenticeship programs, which I'll talk about this evening, for apprenticeship programs, you can already use your BAH. So I think that's your housing allowance. So you can already get your housing allowance if you are in a registered apprenticeship program that's approved for vets. So that's another avenue. So you've got several options. If you're going to be in until October, then you may want to see, I mean, it's such a short time, 7 months, that by the time you identify a program, you get through the paperwork and whatnot, you're not going to have that much more time. But I would say it would be just as meaningful or just as helpful for you to start figuring out, okay, well, what if you could like leverage, Tech Hire, get your housing allowance or GI housing allowance, and then roughly, 6 months out, you would be like ready for a job. Like it would only take you 4 months to go through the boot camp, 2 more months in the job search, you should be good to go. Because folks love hiring veterans, especially if you can get like top secret clearance. If you already have like a top secret clearance, it'll make it way easier for employers to make a hiring decision, especially defense contractors. They love people that can get security clearances. So you've got an advantage if you can tee yourself up for something when you get out. If not, if you can find a program that's a SkillBridge provider, that would be helpful. Check out Operation Code. So Operation Code is a community of service members and former service members that is all focused on helping them transition into tech roles. So a variety of different disciplines there. So that tech program ran out of money till October. What? I thought they just refunded it. So thanks for that bulletin. They ran out once already, and I thought they just refunded it. So it may be that they've exhausted it again, which means they got to put more money in. So last year, I felt like it lasted for a lot longer than if it's already exhausted already. I think it gets funded around July each year because it's one of those like government middle of the year things. So you got some options though. I would definitely look into then you'd have to wait for Tech Hire for Vet Tech if they're out of funds, if they get re-upped in October. But you can do an apprenticeship. Check out your local apprenticeships. I know, again, we're not the only one, so I'll post a link again. Apprendi, the DOL approval, so they can pretty much operate throughout the U.S. We have a DOL approval, and we will be eligible for veteran funds probably within the next 30 days. So well before October. We're working on setting up a SkillBridge program and a couple other programs. The Army has one. It's Army Ignited. So there are a few out there. So feel free to shoot me an email too if you want more, if you have more specific questions. More than happy to give you a couple other options. Zero to Hero. Again, already here on my book, but any other questions? See, I knew it will just take a little while for everybody to get warmed up. And we got into some good stuff. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions coming through. So, I missed one. FMGE Entertainment. What projects do I recommend for a junior developer? Good question. So I often say passion projects, but what I mean by that is something that allows you to sort of scratch an itch that you have in terms of like your curiosity about building something or having some kind of tool. So this is cliche. I keep using this example, but I'm learning how to play the drums during my COVID vacation. So one of the tools that's out there, there's this program called Melodics, and it's kind of like Guitar Hero, where you kind of like play along as the little dots come across the screen. But what I would like to do is I would like to build something that would allow you to like read actual sheet music and play along with actual sheet music, and not the little dots that basically tell you is it your left hand or your right hand that you should hit a drum and which drum you should hit, right? So I probably wouldn't pick that as I wouldn't try and build that entire application as a passion project as a junior developer. Even as a more seasoned developer, because there's just so many pieces to that would just be like unwieldy. So what I would try and do is I'd try and pick something much smaller that could be completed in 2 to 3 days. So especially as an early career developer, you're not wanting to bite off projects that are massive, because it's just really hard for you to get everything to work and have all of the parts of it working and not have like a bunch of bugs that you have to keep trying to figure out, why is this not working and why can't I get it to look nice and all those kinds of things. So maybe try and limit it to something that's, smaller and bite-sized. So in my case, I actually figured out there's an open source library that allows you to sort of like write your notes on sheet music. And so really all I would need to do is maybe write a small piece of software that could move a bar along the music, because the application's already halfway baked. There's an open source library I could start with. And so what I would do is I would take the open source library and I would just add moving a bar across, and then making sure that if I can detect MIDI, if I can detect that that instrument got played at the same time the bar was on or close to that note, that I would mark it as like a plus. And if it didn't, then I'd mark it as a minus. And then you can have like a little floating score, and you can kind of see whether you're hitting the notes on time or you're not. So that would be like an interesting project for me. But for you, it might be something else, right? For you, it might be you're picking up couch to 5K, and you're learning how to, get out there and run a 5K. And so you just need something that keeps track of how many days a week do you run. We're getting you on running streaks where you just every day you just have to log in and put that you did your miles, and then it will just tally what your miles are. So simple tracking type application, right? Something that is going to be useful and that you might actually like have a reason to use the application or have a reason to build the application. The reason why I say this is, one, it will help you to have a better sense of design, of system design, not necessarily design like how it visually looks, but how do you design a system to solve your problem? The second thing that's helpful when you create passion projects like this, that you have to design a system and then implement, is you get a chance to explain that process to an employer or include it as part of the narrative in your portfolio. So it's super helpful for folks to see not just that you built something, but what was your thought process? Why did you design it that way? Why did you make it, have to click a button or check a box or like what? And you might think that's so trivial. Like, obviously you do it this way, but it's not. You will start to notice that as you start having to build something that solves a real problem, you start having to like, oh, I don't know how to make a form, post data somewhere. Now that I have that part working, now I have to figure out this other thing. And that's how a lot of people that are self-taught will learn, because they'll learn by having to actually do tasks. Once they figure out, oh, in order for me to make this work when I refresh the browser, I have to store this in a cookie, right? Or I have to store it in local state so that when the person hits the refresh button, it doesn't like wipe out the user interface. Or I might need to figure out, how do I authenticate? And how do I allow someone to just click once and authenticate with Google and then come back and be able to get into my application? It will make you solve some of those little problems. So those are the projects that you want. Do not just like watch YouTube videos and just do ride-alongs where you're just like typing the same code as what you're seeing, or taking a course on Pluralsight or Udemy or any of those, and then just reproducing that project and saying, oh yeah, now I'm coding. No, you're not. It's like saying I'm riding a bike when you have training wheels on the bike. I mean, sure, you're beginning, but as soon as you take those training wheels off, now you're riding a bike, right? So training wheels on, that's a good start. But I want to see, what can you produce when you're, given fewer constraints? Hopefully that helps. That's how I usually will suggest to people that start. And project could be the way you teach yourself how to code if you're just self-taught. It's just by figuring out projects. And then to someone's point earlier about networking, going to events, like going to a monthly meetup, go to a bring your own project night and talk to people. And the senior engineers be like, oh, that's a big project. You need to first focus on learning this first. And then you just break that piece off and learn that part before you start learning the other pieces. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions? We're getting close to the top of the hour. So now we are going to have to wrap it up. If there are no other questions, again, I do appreciate you jumping on, asking questions. It makes this far more entertaining for me and more helpful for folks. If you know anybody that think it would be a benefit to get their questions answered, please feel free to share this. We'd love to have more people involved, and I'd love to just be able to help that many more people, discover, like I did, that this could be a real career. Then you get all the good stuff, right? In your first job, maybe get lucky, but eventually you'll get to a spot where you get get the catered breakfast and lunch and dogs in the office, and get the limitless LaCroix in the refrigerator, right? But that usually happens after you've kind of really sunk a lot of work and effort into getting that first job. That's the key. Once you get the first one, as long as you're a good person, good employee, then that's it. You're done, at least for this lifetime, especially when the robots take over. But you're not going to have a hard time finding a job after you get your first one. But your first one is a tremendous amount of work. So I'm not going to lie. But that said, get paid good. So makes it worthwhile. If it weren't hard, probably wouldn't be that much money and wouldn't be that many people doing it. So, all right, I'm going to sign off. We'll do this again next week, every week, 12 o'clock noon Pacific. And you can find us on all the major platforms. If you have questions until then, feel free to shoot me an email, mike@stcs.io. And hopefully I'll see some folks tonight. Later.